The entity of Israel is a manifestation of Jewish supremacy. When I refer to Jewish supremacy in Britain, it is when the lobbies that act for the Jewish supremacist entity try to enforce a system that pushes the interests of Israel above the interests of Britain, the interests of Jewish supremacists, or actually just Jews in general, above the interests of anybody who's not Jewish.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another episode on TMJ's Political Current podcast. Today we're delving into one of the most controversial and unsettling stories that's emerging from the UK medical world, one that's sitting right at the crossroads of politics, free speech, and the right of medical doctors to speak out against global injustice. Now, if you remember, several weeks ago I was speaking with Chicago doctor Sam Sheikh Ali. His story was about Zionist networks that had gone after his medical certification through the American Board of Emergency Medicine for comments he made online criticizing Israel. Today I'm speaking with another case in Britain, Dr. Rahmeh Aladwan, a British physician in the UK, who is now in the middle of a storm, one that, interestingly again, has nothing to do with her ability to treat patients. In fact, a tribunal hearing found that she poses no risks to patient safety, but again about her voice on social media, criticizing Israeli aggression, and today she's fighting for her medical license. Now, this story again is not just about one or two doctors. It's about the freedom of expression, the unchecked power of specific lobby groups in Western countries like the US and the UK, and what this means for the future of free speech in these countries. Thank you so much, Dr. Rahmeh, for joining us on TMJ News. Great to have you on. Can you share with us the latest updates on your case right now with the General Medical Council, the GMC, and where does the process stand right now? What are we looking at?
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. Right now, where we stand is we're currently a week on from my second hearing, and where the panel, the MPTS panel, decided that the case should go ahead, the hearing should go ahead. We spent a whole day practically debating whether this second hearing stands, because the General Medical Council submitted all of the same material that we basically argued in the first hearing, and I won that. But the conclusion was that it should go ahead. So because they're adding all of the material that we already went through and material they had before that hearing that they did not submit, and material after, as well as complaints that were dealt with before and an investigation that was dealt with before that is being added again. It's basically a huge dump of material from the GMC to the panel. So they've decided that it should be a 2 to 3 day hearing. They actually initially attempted to have it today, which would have been basically a week on. And we argued that and said, that is really not enough time. So now it's going to be near the end of November, the month. The date is still to be confirmed. But it's the most troubling part is that now there is 2,000 to 3,000 pages of different complaints, and really just random. It feels as though the General Medical Council has just dumped all of this material, hoping for something to stick and hoping to override the first hearing.
And you're right, the first hearing, and this is where it gets interesting, the first hearing, they found that, the whole premise of this case, that based on what you have said on social media, really exercising your free speech rights poses absolutely no risk to patients. And that was what they were trying to prove. And so the tribunal found that you are not guilty of that. You've had perfect patient care. What happened then that this came about again? Who targeted you again? And why did it get to a point where after you were found not guilty, you have to go through this whole process again?
It was a coordinated effort between the Israeli Jewish lobby, notably Campaign Against Anti-Semitism. They've had me as a target of theirs for the good part of a year, really, as well as the Jewish Medical Association. But it's not just them. They've used a law firm that is an Israeli Jewish law firm campaign against anti-Semitism to pressure the General Medical Council to say that if you don't, because so I think it's important to note that the IOT, the MPTS hearing, is almost like it's an emergency a hearing that is held when a doctor is being investigated to say, actually, you can't just carry out a normal investigation. This doctor should have conditions placed on their practice or should be suspended whilst the General Medical Council investigates. So it is quite a it has a high threshold, and it's quite a an extreme measure, basically, to say, this doctor is way too dangerous to continue practicing whilst you investigate. And of course, they're investigating me over X posts and Instagram reels. Um, so it was obviously those groups, as well as the legal threats from them, a huge coordinated media campaign of practically every newspaper in Britain, from the right wing, the left wing media, practically everybody, as well as our health secretary, Wes Streeting, who obviously we know takes donations from private healthcare donors and Israeli lobby donors. He also threatened the General Medical Council. He threatened the MPTS themselves. Interestingly, though, Streeting's threat was that he would take legal action pending the outcome of this hearing. So it couldn't be more clear that he is telling them that actually, if he doesn't get the outcome that he and his lobby, his funders want, then they'll take legal action.
And it's interesting. You've also mentioned how really the GMC is being used as a political weapon and really ridiculing medical regulation in Britain. And your case, as you have said, reveals what you have called Jewish supremacy within the UK. Can you expand on that a little bit more for us? To what extent would you say that this supremacy is in effect in various levels in British society? I know we're talking about medical, so that's a very institutional reality. Can you explain the extent to which this is now happening in Britain?
Yeah, of course. So that's one of the phrases that actually the Jewish lobby have a huge issue with, me saying Jewish supremacy. And of course, we know that Zionism, or the entity of Israel, is a manifestation of Jewish supremacy. It is a factual, system of Jewish supremacy. When I refer to Jewish supremacy in Britain, it is when the lobbies that act for the Jewish supremacist entity try to enforce a system that almost pushes the interests of Israel above the interests of Britain, the interests of Jewish supremacists, or actually just Jews in general, above the interests of anybody who's not Jewish. And they could also be Jewish, by the way, but it's just in terms of who benefits in the end. And so, for example, we have a few doctors that I know of in Britain who have made quite concerning comments, really, about the genocide, about Palestinians, about Palestinian healthcare workers and doctors. And those comments, I truly believe, if I were to have made them, I would either be suspended right now or struck off. But these doctors have not even been investigated by our General Medical Council. So that two-tier system isn't just racism. It isn't discrimination against me because I'm Palestinian. It is the Medical Council's inability to take action against those Jewish doctors. That is where the Jewish supremacy is. It's actually you're treating me differently to how you would treat a Jewish doctor. You're treating me worse, so you're treating them better, and that's you enforcing Jewish supremacy. Another example is the actual doctor who kick-started this second investigation of mine is called Dr. Justin Stebbing. He is a Jewish doctor who is an oncologist. So he actually nearly was struck off because he was found to be engaged in misconduct, also to be quite inappropriate with a female patient, calling her Little Miss Trouble. And they found him to be consistently dishonest. He didn't have an IOT like me. So they didn't feel that this doctor was dangerous enough that they needed to have this emergency IOT hearing to stop him from practicing. He just had a full investigation and went to the full MPTS hearing. So that in itself just shows you, this is a doctor who gave treatment to various patients at the end of their life that were deemed inappropriate. So they shouldn't have had that treatment. They said that he failed to explain the benefits and risks of some treatments, and obviously the misconduct with the female patient. So, whereas for me, I'm making comments online and I'm writing ex posts, but they feel the need to suspend me. And further on, actually, when I posted about this doctor and that he was the one who started this investigation by complaining about me, calling me a quote unquote anti Semite, um, he reached out to the General Medical Council after I made that post, and he told them that he wants to sue me for defamation. And so he asked the General Medical Council to get in touch with me to get my details so that he can have them so that he can sue me for defamation. My medical counsel sent me an email to say that he has asked for my details and the reason why. Now, this is not normal process by the General Medical Council, because actually somebody attempted to do the exact same thing. Somebody who is a doctor, who's not Jewish, asked the General Medical Council for another doctor's details for the exact same reason for defamation, and the GMC responded with they're unable to get the information, but they can tell the doctor that you want to get in touch, and they can't tell that doctor why. So that's another very obvious example here of it isn't actually discriminating against somebody. It is giving preferable or extra treatment, to somebody because they're Jewish. And the way I describe that is plain and simple Jewish supremacy.
Yeah, and as you were explaining this reminds me, I was actually interviewing another doctor here in America in Chicago. Very similar situation where the American Board of Emergency Medicine went after his medical license because of statements he made on social media. And he said something very similar to you. He said, "Why is it that we don't see this from from Zionist doctors in specific, where he was mentioning even at the highest levels of medical boards, even you have people who are sitting there spewing genocidal rhetoric against Palestinians. If it's really about healthcare being neutral and all lives being valued the same, this is a huge contradiction. And it goes to what you're saying as well. So it shows a reality where we have doctors and heads of medical institutions in the US, in the UK, who are viewing really the value of human life selectively. And one of them, like yourself, like the other doctor I interviewed, are getting consequences for it, are getting, their medical licenses and their certifications put on the line, and the others are, going about freely. What are your thoughts on that? Why is that such an issue?
I think once you once once you see it being played out like this, once you see that actually our British or Western institutions are unable to not just punish but um, investigate, to almost put a limit to the behavior or the speech of any Jewish doctor when this speech and behavior is genocidal. It is, calling for, some of them have almost justified the murder of Palestinian doctors. This isn't normal debate. This isn't normal discussion about topics. This is, really crude, genocidal, murderous rhetoric, and unrepentant, which is actually what my GMC counsel, what they told me was the reason they referred me again to the hearing, was apparently I was unrepentant, even though they found nothing to be wrong. That was the word they used, but actually it should be used the other way around. For example, I'll tell you this. There's a Professor Liz Lightstone. She is a nephrology doctor at Imperial College here in London. And she's the one who shared that picture of the military uniform, the doctor's outfit, and the press outfit, and said, somebody in Gaza doesn't know what to wear today. And we complained about her. I think around 100 complaints. the GMC didn't investigate. And I wrote about her as well on my X. 2 days before my second hearing, I got an email from the GMC to say that they are adding this onto the hearing, the bundles, because they continued adding actually until on the day. And what it was a huge email that she had sent to the GMC complaining about me, that I spoke about her. And what she said in that email was basically along the lines of that she had deleted this exact tweet that I was talking about, not because there's anything wrong with it, but because she was sick and tired of people talking about it. And she
Wow.
sent that whilst she was holidaying in Israel, saying that she is outraged about this quote unquote anti Semitism, and that something really does need to be done. And she didn't just send that to the GMC, she CC'd the CEO of the General Medical Council. She also added the Health Secretary, Wesley Streeting. And the entire letter, and actually somebody else as well, the entire letter was so supremacist. There's no other way, if you read that, than to describe Liz Lightstone as a Jewish supremacist, as somebody who believes that she is totally untouchable after justifying the murder of doctors as a doctor herself. She is saying that she did nothing wrong, and actually, people who are criticizing her should be punished and should not be practicing. And obviously, they use the whole, oh, what about Jewish patients, etc. And this is why it's important to say Jewish supremacy, because the excuses or the reasons that we're being punished, um, the reasons are always using Jewish people or the safety of Jews, etc. They don't say anything about sort of just general patients. They specifically talk about Jewish patients when otherwise, if it wasn't specifically Jewish supremacists who are doing this, if somebody is complaining who is not Jewish, and doesn't feel like they're on a different kind of level, a better level than you, they can't use that same excuse. They can't use the anti-Semitism. So they've got almost this kind of, they have two things. They feel they're better than us, and that they shouldn't be ever punished for doing anything that is outrageously wrong. And then they also feel like they can play victim and use that at the same time. And I think when you say Jewish supremacy, you break that down completely. You can't be a Jewish supremacist but also be a victim, and also feel like you are treated unfairly, because you feel you already are placing yourself higher than everybody else. And I think that's why they don't really want us to say the phrase.
And how do you think the UK public has reacted to this? And the reason I ask is because we are seeing in the US, but also in the UK, protests and pro-Palestine sentiments among the public has definitely increased, but it almost seems as though that is not carrying institutionally, because we continue to see this backlash. We continue to see a huge amount of lobby power when it comes to decisions that affect people like yourself. How would you say the public has reacted to your case?
I think the public have actually been mostly really great and supportive from what I've seen. I know that the media in Britain, I think is so powerful. And unfortunately, we just don't have any independent mainstream media. And even actually our alternative media are sometimes afraid, if we say things like Jewish supremacy, or if we're really talking about the root causes, they're quite afraid. But I think because the movement is so strong and has seen so much and learned so much in the past 2 years, uh, they they've been very very supportive. And I think even the public themselves, having seen how our mainstream media obfuscates and sort of outwardly just parrots Israeli propaganda and narratives, they don't rush to just believe it. I do still think that it's played a part in me not having as much support as I could. But I've had really good support. The only thing that I'm afraid hasn't really hit home is how what is happening to me is far greater than just my license, or even just specifically about Palestine. I think my case really, really highlights the capture of British institutions by these lobbyists. And the issue that my case shows, and I think that's why they really don't want the public to realize, is not only how we've got these Israeli, specifically outwardly known Israeli lobbies, it's actually Jewish lobbies that are standing alongside them as well. You know, we have the Board of Deputies of British Jews. This is one of the biggest organizations that represents Jews in Britain. They're against me. The Community Security Trust is again a huge organization, and they specifically asked for me to be punished. The Jewish Medical Association, all of these groups that have come out. Even when I went to go and give a speech in Leeds, you had the Leeds Jewish Council, I believe they're called. They they almost kind of lost it. They didn't want me to even enter the city of Leeds. So I think that I think this is why people are afraid to really discuss my case, because unfortunately it does highlight the complicity of some, if not majority, unfortunately, of the British Jewish communities in supporting Israel. And I wish it wasn't the case. And I think it does need to be highlighted because they have a lot of power in that sense. You know, if you have these groups that are speaking for you on your behalf in your name and are clearly trying to ruin, doctors, professionals, etc., people's lives, I think there is a responsibility to try and help stop that, and this is always twisted to make it look like we're saying, oh, we need to attack Jewish communities in Britain, or they're all guilty as every single Jew in Britain. And it's really the opposite, because I wish it was not the case. I would really like it to not be the case, because then I don't think I would be looking at losing my license. But unfortunately, because the majority of British Jews remain supportive of Israel after this 2-year Holocaust that we've seen, and continue to not distance themselves, their communities, away from them, this institutional grip that we have isn't going to go away. Because I think, as long as this pressure is not applied by everybody collectively, I don't think it's going to work. It won't work with us, as a Palestine movement, as any people in the West who want their sovereignty. If you are just going towards the establishment, the fine, but the establishment is quite literally being used as a tool by the lobby. So you've got to tackle the lobby directly. You have to tackle the lobby, everybody that supports the lobby and their state actors. Otherwise, I don't think we will be sovereign.
Absolutely. And to wrap up the conversation, one other, going off of what you're saying about people oftentimes being even afraid of bringing up certain conversations like this, another, tactic that's often used in this case is intimidation. So trying to intimidate the public, so that they self-censor, so they, don't even exercise their free speech because of the fear of, facing these consequences, despite the fact that it is part of their rights as people who live in these Western societies, whether it's the UK, whether it's the US. You were also, something that happened is you were arrested, I think 1 or 2 days before your hearing. And that's something that also made headlines, and a lot of the interpretations that came out of that, and I want to ask you as well if you think it's true, is intimidation tactics, really trying to make a huge deal out of something, show policing, show the power of how much fear can go into this, so that people are afraid that if they do speak up, they're going to face not just, consequences legally, but also, whether it's about their reputation or, scaring their families, putting them in a position where they feel vulnerable. So how would you interpret that? How much of a role do you think that's also playing in this whole situation?
I agree with you. I think the arrest 2 days before my hearing was definitely intimidation. The lobbies have done this before. And I say this was the lobbies, this was the Israeli Jewish lobbies' arrest of me and not Britain. The police were simply being used as a tool. And I think that's where it is. When on one hand it is intimidating me, it is trying to throw me off before my hearing, it is scaring everybody who is supporting me. um, Specifically, I think it scares the Arabs and Muslims, because because of the persecution that's been decades of persecution. So kind of tries to stop people from following, I guess, or saying what I say. But the other side of it is also that I think they really overplayed their hand, because when they arrested me, the British Jewish lobby pretty much exposed how they can influence British police to to arrest British citizens. That arrest had nothing to do with Health Secretary Streeting being a British Health Secretary. It was him being funded by Israel. That arrest had nothing to do about with the British public or British patients. That had everything to do with the Jewish lobby wanting to assert their strength, and also to try. I think what they're going to do with that is they're going to try and push to legislate a few things that are only going to help Israel and Jewish supremacy in Britain. And one of them is that they don't want people to say Jewish supremacy. So I think they overplayed their hand, and they showed us exactly what is threatening to them. What I do fear is that if we don't push back on it enough right now, and they actually manage to, because they quoted Jewish supremacy when they arrested me, if if they manage to make it illegal for us to point out a certain supremacy, that means that they've almost legislated and completely solidified Jewish supremacy institutionally in Britain, as pretty much the number one undue force on our institutions, and will become also on our public.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Rahmeh, for joining us on TMJ. I'm really happy we had you on and we could share your story, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
If you like what you see here on TMJ News, don't forget to like and share and subscribe to our channel for more weekly interviews. TMJ News is an independent, grassroots media outlet, and you can find ways to support us by reading the caption below. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode, and I hope you liked it.